Let's find out how do we solve a quadratic equation. Let's begin by talking about what is a quadratic equation. A quadratic equation, or a standard form of writing a quadratic equation, that looks like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. So a, b, and c are real numbers and a should not be equal to 0. Notice how the variable is x over here, and the degree of the equation, which is the maximum power to which the variable is raised, if that is equal to 2, that is degree of equation equals 2, then we are dealing with a quadratic equation. So there are many ways of solving a quadratic equation. Number one, we can use the factoring to solve a quadratic equation. So we can solve by factoring. Number two, we can use the quadratic formula. So we can use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation. And third thing is we can use completing the squares to solve for a quadratic equation. Now let's take an example and see if we can actually solve by factoring. So let's say we have a quadratic equation that looks like this. X squared plus x equals, let's say, minus 42. So how do we solve this quadratic equation? Let's make it a plus 42. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to subtract 42 on both sides. So this is going to look like x squared plus x minus 42 equal to 0. Is this a quadratic equation? It sure is, because the variable x is raised to the maximum power of 2. So degree of this equation is 2, which is a quadratic equation. Now we know that 42 can be split up as 7 and 6. Those are two factors. So we can rewrite this quadratic equation as x squared, let's say, plus 7x minus 6x minus 42 equal to 0. Now from the first two terms, we can take x common. So if we take x common, we are going to get x plus 7. And now from the second two terms, we are going to take minus 6 common factor out. We are going to get x plus 7 equal to 0. Now if you take a look at x plus 7, we can take x plus 7 as a common factor out now. Then we are going to get x minus 6 equal to 0. So at this point we have factored out our quadratic equation into two factors, x plus 7 times x minus 7, x plus 7 times x minus 6 equals 0. So now we can, let's rewrite it like this. So we have x plus 7 multiplied by x minus 6 equals 0. So anytime we have product of two numbers equals 0, any one of them can be equal to 0. So if I think of this factor to be equal to 0, x plus 7 equals 0. Now if I subtract 7 from both sides, we are going to get x equals negative 7. So this is one of my solutions of the quadratic equation. Now if you think about this factor to be equal to 0, so we have x minus 6 equals 0. We are adding 6 on both sides. Then we are going to get x equals 6. So the two solutions, or the two roots of our quadratic equation, they are x equals negative 7 and x equals 6. So in this example, we learned how do we solve a quadratic equations by the method of factoring.